Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Welcome to our info session on our state court oral exam masterclass, which is going to be held in April of this year. My name is Virginia Valencia. I'm the co-founder of Interpretrain, and I have the pleasure of being here with Athena Matilski. She is the founder of Athena Sky Interpreting.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Also with us tonight is Brad Wilk. He's the co-owner and manager of Interpretrain. Say
Hello,
hi,
everyone.
Brad.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, Virginia.
Awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Athena, who's going to quickly cover some logistics and get us started.
All right, let's get some logistics out of the way. As you may have noticed, you have been muted, and that is just to avoid cacophony. So we're happy to have you participate. Feel free to use the chat to communicate, and there will be a Q&A after we are finished. I'd just like to share with you what we're going to cover today. We're going to begin with some quick group intros just so we can get to know each other. And I saw that some of you were already introducing yourselves on the chat. It's awesome to see you from all over the place. Then we're going to talk about the challenge, passing the state court oral exam, or maybe even leveling up if that's where you are right now. We'll tell you our stories, how Virginia and I passed these exams. And we'll talk about our method and program for overcoming the challenge. After that, we'll move on to some next steps, how you can submit your application to join our program. And at the end, we'll have our Q&A. All right, awesome. So have you ever taken a state oral exam before? Don't be shy. I took the Spanish English court interpreting exam twice, and I took the French exam once. So I'm now a veteran of state exams. What about you, Virginia?
I actually took the New Jersey exam and I took the New York exam. I took the New Jersey twice. The first time I got approved as a journeyman and then the second time as a master. And I see here in the chat, we have 5 times. We have some people who've never taken it, 2 times, once, yes. So we have yes and no's.
Okay,
Didn't
nice.
make the score, yeah.
You know, a lot of people do end up taking the test more than once, and it's really nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, you know, a step on your way to the goal. And often you learn a lot about where your strengths and weaknesses are by taking the exam once or twice or 3 times, and then, but don't give up because you'll get there. So let's jump right in. We're all here because we have a goal, and that is to pass the state court oral exam and attain court certification, or perhaps again level up, like maybe you're journeyman and you want to get to master. Now, if you are an interpreter of other languages, then we do have other things available for you, because this particular course, it is for Spanish English interpreters. But personally, I offer private coaching to interpreters of all languages. I have students who speak Spanish and French, but I've also had students who speak Romanian or who speak Arabic. So if you're looking for private coaching, I can help you with the techniques that you need to master, even just through English, working with you in English and giving you resources that way. As well, Interpretrain has an all-English self-study program that's really amazing that you can use to help you achieve your goals by studying on your own. So we just wanted to throw those options out there so you're aware of them. And then we'll continue to talk about this course, which is specifically for Spanish English interpreters. Now, this is a challenge. It can feel like an uphill battle at times. Only about 12% of people who take the exam actually pass it. We want you to be part of that 12%. We're here to tell you that you can do it. It's not an impossible goal. It will take a lot of work and a lot of discipline, but we'd like to guide you through that process so that it doesn't feel like an insurmountable journey. We do understand that it can be daunting, and you're probably asking yourself some questions right about now. How do I get started? What should I be studying? What should the sequence be that I use? What are my weak spots? And then once you know what your weak spots are, how are you going to strengthen them? How are you going to assess and keep track of your progress? And how are you going to stay motivated until you accomplish that goal? What Virginia and I would like to do is to take the guesswork out of your training. We'll talk a little bit later about the process that we both went through when we were studying for our exams, But it did involve a lot of guesswork, and it involved a lot of frustration because we weren't sure about the best things to do. And over time, each of us separately cultivated some really great resources for our studies. And that's what we want to share with you so that you don't have to have that same kind of puzzle that we did when we were studying. We want to offer you a clear strategy and a holistic approach, one that covers your mind, body, and soul. And then we're going to make the impossible possible. And that's about it for the challenge. So let's tell our stories now. I'm going to ask Virginia to take over and introduce herself.
All righty. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to get started from the very beginning with my parents. My mother is Cuban. My father is Colombian. They are both teachers. My mother's parents were actually also teachers, so I come from 3 generations of teachers. It's in my blood. I was born, as I mentioned, in Cali, Colombia. Here I am, the youngest of 3. When my parents met, my mother actually had a master's degree, but my father had no university degree. He came from a very humble background, and when he was 13 years old, his father said, "That's enough of studies now. You have to quit school and help support this family." So when he met my mother, he was actually working towards, he was back at school. He managed to finish high school and he was now working towards getting his university degree. So I watched my father hustle my whole childhood. He was both a teacher and a student. And I actually had some dreams of my own. I wanted to be an actress. My father eventually became an industrial engineer. And when he got finished, my mother and my father had a deal, which is once he finished studying, we would be moving on to Gainesville, Florida. That's what we did. And my mother got her PhD. We went back to Colombia. When it was time for me to go to the university, my father sat me down and he said, "Okay, what is it that you want to do?" And I wanted to go back to my dream of acting, which was my first love. And my dad, when he heard me say I want to be a star, he actually, what he was hearing is, "I want to starve." So, so he actually steered me away from acting because he didn't want me to go through the financial struggles he had been through. And I started studying psychology. As I was studying psychology, I began teaching in Berlitz, teaching English as a second language, and I fell in love with teaching, and is a love that I have until this day. Psychology, on the other hand, I wasn't so crazy about. When I was doing my internship, even though I loved studying it, when it was time to see patients, I was having a lot of insomnia. When I did get sleep, I would have a lot of nightmares regarding my patients. So it really wasn't something I wanted to do, but I graduated anyway. And then I decided to go back to pursue acting. I moved to Manhattan, and that's when I understood my father's fears of me being a starving actor. I realized, okay, I have to get a gig, I have to work, and I began interpreting simply because I knew English and Spanish. I didn't want to wait tables. My first gig was a big flop. I actually really struggled through the whole thing. I had a patient attorney who, coaxed me through the whole thing and gave me a pen and paper and told me how to do it. But I was really, really bad. It was a shameful performance. I got out of there and I realized I better study this. So I went to Hunter College and got my certificate in translation and interpretation. And so many doors started opening up to me in the interpreting world. And not just that, I began to really love it. When I had been studying psychology, it really felt like a burden to me. But here I felt like I could help people and I was really getting a kick out of it. For those of you who have had the chance to interpret, many of you I know have fallen in love with it too, because it's really a great way to help people and make a difference. So I decided to jump head in. And my next goal was to be certified by New York and New Jersey Superior Courts. I wanted to keep calm and study hard, but I have to admit it was really hard because of my background in psychology and because of my background as a teacher. I was often finding myself, my mind was wandering. Whenever I kept studying, I kept making mental wish lists and feeling frustrated with the material I was working with and feeling like it could be more user-friendly. If I had structured this material, I would make it more according to how we naturally learn, according to cognitive principles that I knew as a psychologist. And this became the seed for the labs, which I didn't have at this point. So I just decided, okay, I will do my best. And I crammed like a crazy maniac. And I became certified in New York and New Jersey Superior Courts. I found a job in Essex as a staff interpreter, and I fell even deeper in love with serving people as an interpreter. And then my next goal was to have my federal certification. I went into the marathon mindset, which is what we're going to help you get into, because that's what it takes to pass these exams. And I basically decided I'm going to create the things that I wish existed. And that's how the 3-step method was born. This is the method that we're going to be using in this course. After going through a lot of practices, I realized that I was stumbling through a lot of them and having a lot of difficulty unless it was a practice where I was more familiar with the vocabulary. So I began getting the vocabulary out of the way first. My first step would be to become familiar with that vocabulary. Now, why is that? I feel like interpreting is a lot like surfing. I'm sure those of you who have had the chance to interpret have felt that moment where you catch a wave, where everything seems in sync, where you're able to go from source language to target language almost instantaneously. And when you're on that wave, that's when you're skill developing. When you are in that, catching that wave and on that surfboard, mentally speaking, that's when you're able to get faster in your simultaneous mode, when you're able to get bigger chunks and better notes in your consecutive, and where you're going to sound more coherent in the sight translation mode. But when you fall off that surfboard, it's really hard to get back on, so you're not really skill building. So the important thing is to get the vocabulary out of the way, and then you can move on to the interpretation, and then you can go ahead and do the evaluation. And once I started that method, I really loved the results I was getting. I also created a bunch of vocabulary flashcards, which are the inspiration to a lot of the materials that we're going to be using in this course. And I created audio drills. Back in the day, it was with cassettes. I know I'm dating myself here, but yeah, I would use audio drills on my cassettes, and that's also become the inspiration to the materials you're going to be using. I have to say a lot of teamwork was at play. And that's why we have structured this course for you to have support from a team, because a team will make all the difference in the world. In my case, it was my mother. She flew in from Colombia and she became my study buddy. I also had an amazing support. At that moment, it was Brad, who was my then boyfriend, and he was just a great cheerleader, and he really pushed me to keep going. I remember when I got my results in the mail, I tore open that envelope and then I realized I passed. And it was such a good feeling. And that's why we have created this course, because we want you to have that exact same feeling. We want to help you get to the finish line and be super proud of yourself. After I had passed as a federal court interpreter, I worked a few years. Here I am in a picture that was published in a newspaper of a trial that was a high-profile case. After some years of witnessing a lot of trials dealing with murder and rape and child abuse and gang violence, I felt like it was time for a change. Brad and I moved to California. We got married, and here we are with our cutie dog, Betty Boop. And we founded InterpreTrain. And through InterpreTrain, I've had the privilege to teach, to create new materials, and basically I feel like I'm finally doing what I was put on this earth to do. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome, Virginia, thank you. All right, I guess I have to introduce myself now. So, this is me. I'm the monkey in the middle right here, back when I was a kid. This little guy over here has just completed his PhD studies in astrophysics, and the rest of us have grown up quite a bit as well, as you'll see in the next a couple pictures down the way. This is me when I was a kid. My love of acrobatics is still here now. That's me about 20 years later. And this is my whole family. This was actually a couple of years ago. You can see that my brothers are now much taller than I am. And my sister sprouted 5 children. So that's all of us. And there's like 3 more on the way this year from various siblings. But growing up, I was actually homeschooled. And the interesting thing about that is that I think that the most relevant thing is that I learned how to learn. We were very much self-directed growing up, and so the idea was, you know, we had books, and we were able to meet people who had similar passions and interests to us, who could help us to follow our dreams. And I really learned what it took to follow your passion and to break down whatever it is that you want to accomplish into its component parts. And that's what I ended up doing ultimately with interpreting, where I knew I wanted to be an interpreter. I also knew that I wasn't ready yet and I didn't have the skills, but I figured out what those skills were and I addressed them one by one. So I've had a lot of friends and mentors along the way who have helped me out and encouraged me to keep going, even when it seemed a bit impossible. When I was 16, I started community college, and that's where I started taking Spanish, because up until then I had only spoken English. And at that point, I fell in love with the language, and almost immediately I decided that I wanted to be an interpreter. But I knew that my language skills were not good enough yet. And so I ended up spending a year in Honduras, where I taught in a bilingual school. I taught sixth graders there as a volunteer. When I came back to New Jersey, I started to begin the process to become a court interpreter. I started with the written exam. I passed the written exam, but of course, as you all know, that's just the beginning. So it took quite a bit of hard work to get where I needed to be to attain this certification. I studied my butt off. And what I did, it turns out, is actually very similar to what Virginia was doing. And it's ironic because we were in the same neck of the woods, but we actually didn't meet each other until she had moved out to California. But it turns out that separately, we were doing very similar things. We were doing exercises, recording those exercises, listening to our renditions, and then repeating again and again and again. And that's something that if you take this course with us, you will be doing. You will be repeating the exercises again and again until the vocabulary is sticking and you're not scared of the long utterances and things just start to work so you get into that surfboard zone that Virginia was talking about earlier. Sometimes it felt like I had 8 different arms, but eventually I attained conditional approval. In the state of New Jersey, that means that you've passed, well, you haven't passed, but you've attained between 60 and 70%. And it's enough to allow you to work in the courts on a conditional basis, which means that you're sort of the last resort and you have a limited number of proceedings that you can work on. I decided to keep going because I did want to actually get certified, or in New Jersey, as I call it, approved. And I decided to change my attitude. Up until this point, I had been feeling very self-conscious about the fact that I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I was very, very critical of my Spanish. I was very aware of all of my deficiencies and all of my weaknesses. And I decided, you know what? It doesn't matter. I looked in the mirror and I told myself, you have got this. To visualize your highest self, you can start showing up as her. And that's what I started doing. I started to tell myself, you know what? Yes, I have weaknesses and I need to address those weaknesses. And I'm currently studying really hard to overcome those weaknesses. And it's also okay to change my attitude. So I started telling myself, I'm the best interpreter there ever was. I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to do my best. And I made it. And I actually jumped a level. I went from conditional approval to master. And I think that of course, I studied a ton. And that's really, really important. But attitude is important too. And it's something that doesn't often get addressed. And I have a student who actually passed the federal exam last year. And if those of you who don't know it, it's gotten even crazier. It's about 4% of people who take that test pass. It's a very difficult one. And she passed it last summer and she said to me, Athena, you're one of the only people out there who's actually talking about the mental health aspect to this. And that's why Virginia and I feel so lucky to work with each other, because she cares about it as much as I do, that you have to address the nerves that come about on exam day. I know people who have failed the exam just because, this exam and other exams, because they've had panic attacks in the middle of it, because they forget a word and then suddenly they start spiraling down. I'm seeing some of you nodding and you can probably relate. It's important. You can have all the technique in the world, but if you're not able to master that, then you can show up on exam day and you're not going to do your best. So in my experience, what I did was, of course, now I had finished with master approval and I was ready to just stop there. But my friend and mentor, Grace, told me, no, Athena, you have to keep going, take the federal exam. And I was like, oh no, more studying. But I did it. So I picked the federal exam as my next challenge. And this time I put together a study group because I knew I couldn't do it alone. And that's part of this whole thing where Virginia and I were just kind of trying to put together the resources that we knew that we needed. And you need other people. Together with my teammates, we created audio glossaries. We compiled glossaries on DNA and all sorts of things. And we had a book club so that we could improve our Spanish and our English in a kind of fun, interesting way. And most importantly, we were there to hold each other accountable. So again, I felt like a mad lady sometimes with 8 different hands, and everybody who knew me was like, Athena, you're studying for another exam. And there were times that I felt super overwhelmed and stressed, and more than that, just didn't know exactly if I was doing what I needed to be doing. But eventually I passed. And like Virginia says, that's pretty much the most amazing feeling in the world. What my takeaway was that more help would have been nice. It would have been nice to know when I was practicing, how am I progressing? Am I actually making tangible steps forward? Because sometimes you just feel like you're treading water, and it's really important to have feedback from somebody else who can see your progress and help you to point out the things that maybe you're not noticing and just guide you along the way. So I started teaching. A few years ago, I began my company, Athena Sky Interpreting, and I started to share some of the tricks that I've learned along the way and my path to certification, and also as an interpreter. I worked for several years in New Jersey, in Mercer County, as a staff interpreter, and I worked freelance as a medical interpreter and a court interpreter for many years. So I began to share what I knew with people, and I found my new love, which is teaching. I really love interpreting, and I also love teaching, and I plan to do both in the future. I also got my master's degree last year, which was really exciting. And so now I have a master's degree in conference interpreting, which means I'm cross-trained as a court interpreter, a medical interpreter, and a conference interpreter. And so that's me in a nutshell. And I hope that I can offer all of you some of what I've learned in my experience.
All right, that's awesome. So now we are going to go ahead and talk about overcoming this challenge. It is really a privilege to work with Athena because she's as excited as I am to help people not go through the same thing we went through and not reinvent the wheel. So what we're here to offer you is our unique approach. This approach consists of 3 innovative tools that you're going to have in this masterclass. The first thing is you're going to have an effective method, which is that method we talked about, the 3 steps. You're also going to have state-of-the-art materials, study materials that you're going to be working with, and we're going to demo them for you. And you're also going to have a holistic masterclass. As Athena mentioned, this is not just about academics. This is also about learning how to breathe, learning how to take care of yourself, learning how to have a support system, and learning how to manage those nerves, or else anything that you study will be good for nothing if you freeze up during the test. So let's begin talking about that method. Again, we're going to be working with that 3-step method. Before I published the labs, Athena was instrumental in helping us with the pedagogy, with the instructions, with laying out the sequence. And one of the things that she pointed out to me was one of my blind spots, which is that students can get a little spoiled. If you are always used to learning the vocabulary up front, it's great when it comes to skill building because you won't get off the surfboard and you'll be able to really build your skills and develop. But it can also make you a little bit awkward when you turn into unknown vocabulary during a test. And there will be unknown terms during the test. You have to know how to improvise. You have to know how to capture the meaning, even if you don't know the exact words. So one of the things that she pointed out was to begin with what she calls a blind run. And what a blind run is you just step into straight number 2, and you basically do the interpretation. And then you evaluate yourself, and then you go back to step 1. And you learn the vocab. Now you know exactly which words tripped you up. Then you do the interpretation again, and then you do the evaluation. And we do this repeatedly until you feel like you're a master. This innovative method is proven to boost your skills and your vocabulary. And that's why our students love it. This is a proven method. We have already worked with many students who have been able to become certified thanks to this material. Now let's talk about your study material. We're going to be working with InterpreTrain State Court Interpreter Oral Exam Prep, which is for English and Spanish. And it's based on that wish list I was telling you guys about. So our labs include, in step 1, you're going to be dealing with vocabulary drills to make sure you get that vocabulary nice and tight. And what I wanted to do in this program is I wanted to offer you diverse stimulation, because in psychology, we know that when you learn something from different angles, you really are able to create more neurological paths and networks. So we want to stimulate you visually. We want to offer you audio material, and we want to offer different tasks to learn the exact same vocabulary. Every single vocabulary unit that you'll find was researched in 10 different reputable sources, so you can trust this material. Then when you move on to step number 2, that's something that I also found very useful during my time, was that our interpreting practices can be played slower and then faster. So that will allow you to skill build progressively. We also offer dual mode, so you can take the exact same lab you can interpret it consecutively, and then interpret it simultaneously. So all that work that you did to learn that vocabulary will help you on those two fronts. Also, we have real court cases, only the identifying information has been changed, and real documents. So when you're working with our sight translation modules, labs, you're going to be working with the real thing. And then we move on to step 3, and I'm super, super proud of step 3 because you can get an actual grade. You're going to be able to score yourself and identify your strengths and weaknesses. And there's going to be no more guessing on how well you did. And this is one of the things that drove me crazy when I was studying, was that I would finish a practice and I would listen to myself, but I wouldn't get a score. So I had no idea if this had been on a real test, if I would have passed or I would have fell flat on my face. Another thing that I'm super proud of is that this is material you can trust. We were able to work with an incredible team. All of these people put their best foot forward to get you the most trustworthy material possible. One of them is Virginia Benjamin, who is actually a published author of materials for interpreters. She has a glossary for English-Spanish court interpreters for the legal field. And again, we have had a lot of students use this material, and it's tried and true, and it's helped them, and they're very happy with it. And now we're going to talk about our master class, and I'm going to hand it over to Athena so she can tell us a little bit more about that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so let me just make this bigger for you. So as we've already mentioned, Virginia and I kind of came together and we had our own wish list of things that we wished that while we were studying for our various certifications, we could have had this type of support. And from there, we've designed a course for you that is holistic. It encompasses wellness. And I know you often hear that sort of thing, and I don't know, it sounds a bit like fluff, right? Like, oh, that's not so important. But it truly is. In order to be able, when we say that we're treating this like a marathon, we really mean it. So no, we're not going to force you to go to the gym and lift weights, but taking care of yourself is a very important piece of that journey, because if you're not feeling well, then you're just not going to be able to be as successful. You need to be able to program your brain to succeed. So we're going to use the marathon mindset to help you achieve your goals. We're going to come together as a group of motivated individuals, and that's part of what our application process is screening for, that you actually are going to bring to the table the commitment and the motivation to help each other succeed. You will be each other's supporters, you'll be each other's biggest fans, and also you will help each other to point out where you can improve. Sorry. Part of that is self-care. It is making sure that you're taking care of yourself physically and making sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to be able to take care of yourself first. You gotta nourish to flourish. Part of all of this will include breathing techniques. Why? Well, breathing mindfully actually increases your concentration, it increases your accuracy, and increases your memory retention. One of my first things that I'll tell people when we're working on anxiety for test taking, or what am I going to do if I forgot the utterance? Breathe. That's the first thing you need to do, is breathe and have a narrative in your head that you can change what it is that you're telling yourself, so you don't spiral down and just lose it completely. Breathing is an effective way to keep calm. When you're nervous, your brain is not getting enough oxygen and may deny you access to crucial information. And maybe you've even felt that before, when you get that tightness in your chest and it starts to, again, to spiral down because you're not getting enough oxygen. And so you get more and more nervous and it keeps going down. And so one of the first things you got to do is just breathe. An oxygenated brain grants you easy access to data. We'll also be offering you study buddies. You will be each other's teammates. A study buddy will increase your motivation, your commitment, and light a fire under your butt. It will also give you useful feedback, and that's really important too. We have a forum as part of our course, and that's the way that you'll be able to communicate. That's the way you'll be able to let us know that you have completed your homework assignments. If you have a question on something that's come up for you while you were studying, you'll be able to post it, and all of us, Virginia, myself, and your classmates, will be able to see and respond as necessary. As I mentioned earlier, part of what we're going to be doing is repeating our exercises. So each class will come together, we'll talk about the vocabulary, we'll have some motivational exercises, and we will get down to the nitty-gritty of interpreting again and again and again and again. Some people feel like that is cheating, like, oh, now I know what's coming, and so I can't do the exercise again. Honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. And it's probably because of that misconception that many people fail interpreting tests. Because the thing is, once you've done an exercise and you've identified what your weak points are, and you've figured out what the vocabulary is, and you understand what you have to do better next time, there needs to be a next time where you can integrate all of that information and where you can train your brain to actually do it the right way. If all you do is just realize the things that you're doing wrong without actually rewiring your brain and changing the patterns that have been ingrained, sometimes from years of interpreting the exact same way, then it does you no good to know where your weaknesses are. You need to actually integrate those changes. Repetition lets you squeeze every last drop out of each interpreting practice. So no, it's not going to give you another blind run. That's what the other exercises will be for, but it will give you everything else. Now, why is the failing rate so high? All of the reasons that I've just mentioned, that you can, that maybe you're not studying enough, maybe you're not getting the support that you need, and maybe you're approaching it from the wrong way, and that's what Virginia and I want to help you with. So what's the common missing piece? Well, the common missing piece is a team. To be able to work with other people who are going to give you the support that you need. We'll give you the support that you need to achieve your goals. We'll give you instructor guidance for 3 months. Now that's April through July. We know that you are all from all over the place and different states have tests at different times. But what we're hoping to do is guide you through this intensive process where you really acquire the skills and the techniques that you need and you understand how to study. So then if your test is a couple months down the road, you will still have materials left over. We're going to leave you with 3 extra weeks of materials that you will now know how to use even once our class is already over, and you'll be able to work with those materials right up until your test date. You'll also be able to keep working with your pods. So our hope is to work with you for those 3 months and then to hand you the tools that you need to continue that journey up to whenever it is that your date for testing is scheduled. You can receive pod support right up until your test date, and that'll be one of the things that we'll be asking you so that we can place you in pods where you might not have exactly identical test dates, but hopefully you'll have similar ones. The classes with the instructors will be from April 12th to July 1st, 2021. And we're going to jumpstart it with 3 classes the first week. Normally there'll be 2, but the first week there will be 3. And that's so you can go through the first 2 weeks of note-taking for consecutive interpretation with Virginia. If you're familiar with this manual that Interpretrain has published themselves, this program is like that manual, but on steroids. It will really walk you through what you need to know for note-taking in the consecutive mode. It will address listening, visualization, memory, symbols, and techniques to streamline your notes. And you may notice that listening, visualization, and memory have nothing to do with writing anything down. And that's actually on purpose. If you can't listen, visualize, and really maximize your memory capacity, then your notes won't make any sense and they will just distract from the message. So part of your note-taking, part of your consecutive is actually just really, really polishing your ability to listen and to use your skills of visualization to help your memory. And you'll be working on that for the first 2 weeks. Time management is also really important, and we'll be talking about that with you. The big takeaway is really that it's not about having time, it's about making time. And lucky for you, we've already created your schedule. The schedule that we've designed will be the following. On Mondays and Thursdays, that's when we'll have our online class. And you'll be meeting with either Virginia or myself, or sometimes both of us. The class will last for 2 hours. And I said earlier, we'll be going over vocabulary, we'll be discussing homework questions, and then we'll be diving into that day's exercise and ending with some motivational exercises and that sort of thing, and then going over the homework for the coming class. It'll be held from 5 to 7 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast. That's 8 to 10 Eastern. the math would be what, 6 to 8, 7 to 9. You can do the math for Central and Mountain, but it'll be a 2-hour class. If you miss class, you will have the opportunity to watch the session and do the work when it's convenient for you. Now, you do want to make sure not to fall behind, because this is going to be an intensive schedule and it will be difficult to catch up if you miss a bunch in a row. On Tuesdays is when we recommend that you meet with your pods. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays is when you would be doing your homework. There will be a little bit of flexibility there, so that you might be able to double up on one day if you're not free Tuesday evenings, for example. But you are, again, going to need to make sure that you keep up with the work, because part of what you're doing with the homework is preparing for the next class. On Saturday, if you're feeling extra nerdy, then we will have some additional exercises that you can do that are optional. Then on Sunday, you can do nothing and chill, because you deserve it, and you probably haven't seen your family all week and you've been working like a crazy person, and that will be your day to take your siesta and to have a margarita by the pool. Now, we know that time is money, and so we want to explain exactly what we'll be offering you. The total hours is it's over 120 hours. That's 50 instructor contact hours, 25 2-hour classes. With your pod, you'll be doing additional 24 study hours. Homework will be over 48. And this will be 12 weeks of intensive work with the full group. And then, like I said, you'll have those 3 extra weeks that you can do immediately after the course is over, or maybe you can save them for a little bit later on if your test is later in the year. We know it's an intense program, and it's on purpose, because we really want you to get where you want to be goal-wise. But just hang in there, because the sacrifices are not going to last a lifetime, but the results really will. So part of the program is going to offer you a diversity of tools, and that is going to take place through Interpretrain's labs. So let me just take a moment to get into my account on Interpretrain, and I will show you how those labs work. Oh, and look, it's still open. All right, let me share my screen again, and I'll walk you through it. Can everybody see my screen? Not if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
All right, awesome. Okay, so this is my account, by the way. So here I am in the State Court Interpreter Oral Exam Training Program, and you'll have a similar account to this one. I'm going to click on Lab 48 right here. And I'll just show you. So this is the 3 steps that Virginia mentioned earlier. Now, first, you would probably do your blind run so that you can see, okay, what is it like when I don't actually know what vocabulary I'm going to hit? But then once you've finished it, you'll know the vocabulary that you need to know. And you have several different ways of studying. One of them is through the slides. Here you can see they've generated a level of difficulty. They've rated it as 3, and it's terminology related to general court terms. And here are the different instructions. So for example, you'll see the term cornerstone. Now, cornerstone is a vocabulary unit that is being scored, but it's always really important to learn vocabulary in context. So these slides have you actually go through a phrase where you see jurors are the cornerstone of our judicial system, and then you have to try to interpret that whole sentence. So do it in your head. Los miembros del jurado, and then you start to think, do I know how to say cornerstone? And then once you've come up with that phrase in your head, then here, or out loud, even better, then here you can see the whole sentence interpreted, or translated in this case. Los jurados son la piedra angular de nuestro sistema judicial. And you can see that in red, that's the actual scoring unit. Up here, you can see that there are other ways to say it, because there always are. Piedra angular, base fundamental, pilar, esenciales. So there will be other ways to say it as well, and you can see them up there. And this vocabulary has been vetted by a team of really great people. You can also do it audio style. And that's really great, because you'll be able to do it on the move. So you can listen to this while you're doing the dishes, or while you're out on a walk, or you're folding your laundry. And at the same time as you are doing household chores, you can also be practicing your vocabulary. There are drills that are available for you as well. So here we can see our flashcards. Serve as a juror. I click it, and then it gives me all of these different equivalents. There's a memorize tool. where you have to see if you can get it. And then then you can click to show answer. And here you have it again. You can also generate quizzes with the different terms. And so here you can see serve as a juror, you have this answer, which is the right one, but you also have all these others. And there's a matching game as well. So once you've gone through all the vocabulary, perhaps you've pinpointed a few words that are still escaping you. And that's where target practice comes in, because you can actually target the terms that are giving you difficulties. Here you can go through, and let's say you had trouble remembering cornerstone, you couldn't remember give undue weight, you had trouble with ruling, you keep forgetting that one, and deliberations. So now you've selected the ones that you want, you submit that, and here they are. So now you can just hone in on the ones that were giving you difficulty. Cornerstone, piedra angular. Yes, okay, I was right, I'm gonna click right. Give undue weight, no idea, can't remember. Oh, okay, otorgarle una importancia indebida, fine. All right, I'll mark it incorrect, I didn't get it. Once you've gone through all of them and you've marked them, you click finish, and here it says, oh, keep going until you've interpreted it all correctly. Well, let's say the next time I get this one right, then it'll tell me that I've finished and that I can now go on to the next step. So that's vocabulary. And then step 2 would be to interpret it again. You can see you have the option for consecutive and simultaneous, and there's different speeds available to you. The state exam is 120 words a minute, and we're going to offer you different speeds, sometimes faster than that, so you can be more than prepared when you go in on test day. This is what you see for simultaneous as well, 120 words a minute and 140. And finally, you get to that grading process that Virginia mentioned earlier. And this is really what makes their materials so unique when it comes to practice materials, because you can actually generate that grade that we're all wishing that we could have. So I'm going to show you how this works. It's really cool, actually. What you do is you upload the audio file of your interpretation. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I've saved my interpretation. And what you'll see is that the audio file will be uploaded. And as we're listening to it, you're going to be able to go along and see how your interpretation was. And then once you stop to look at a particular scoring unit, the audio will stop as well. So you don't actually have to pause the audio. Now, I just want to make sure that I've shared my sound. I didn't actually have to do that. All right, so I have my sound shared. So we're going to hear my interpretation.
Preliminary Jury Instructions. Antes de empezar, quiero aprovechar esta oportunidad para agradecerle a ustedes por prestar servicio de jurado.
Okay, so she said prestar servicio de jurado, and you can see, okay, I was right, and so I'm going to mark that one right.
Nuestro sistema judicial depende de personas tales como ustedes para que los litigantes sean juzgados.
Okay, litigantes, got it right. You'll notice that if we keep listening to this, she'll get a lot of them right. But if you get it wrong, then you could always mark the X. Or if you use a term that you don't see here, but that you believe is correct, then you could mark it as research. So you have those 3 options available to you. And once you've gone through this whole thing, then you'll be able to generate your grade. I'm going to stop here and I'll let Virginia show you how that grading process works, and then we'll wrap up and take your questions.
Awesome. So can everyone see my screen? I think so.
Yes.
Great. So here we are. Imagine we went through this whole practice and we graded everything. You've seen how everything has turned to green. That means it has been graded. We're going to grade the very last portion of it. And once we have done that, we're able to submit it. And voila, it tells us these are the terms to research. Very important. You need to research this in a reputable source and be honest with yourself. Don't just say, well, I've always said it like this, or I've heard other people say it like this. No, go to a reputable source. If you got it right, be honest. If you got it wrong, be honest. And then you're going to submit. And this is what we work so hard to give you. This is an actual breakdown of every single term you got right and every single term you got wrong. So you're going to be able to zone in on the exact same terms that you need to. You're also going to be able to put the title of the lab. It's going to generate the date. how many times you've done this lab, because of course we're doing this repeatedly. Let's say we did this 3 times. And then you say if it's a consecutive term, let's say it was 55 to 65 word chunks. And then you're going to be able to evaluate yourself on different fields. For example, how accurate were you generally, not just in the scoring units. Let's say from 1 to 10, it was a 10. How complete was your interpretation? Let's say it was a 9. Did you sound natural? Let's say I kind of did, but there's room for improvement. How was your grammar and your syntaxes? Let's say it was great. Let's talk about hesitations. Did I hesitate a little bit? Oh, let's say I'm hesitating a little bit. So that wasn't so good. But I was smooth when I self-corrected. I had a poker voice, which was awesome. I had very good volume and I sounded confident. I had a great pace. This is especially important for sight translation. And then you would write a comment here and then you submit. And the beauty of it is that you get a certificate of completion. So you're going to get a grade, you're going to get a date, and you're going to get first your self-evaluation grade, and then also your vocabulary grade. And you can download this PDF so you can keep track of your progress. So you'll be able to see exactly how you're faring as you're progressing through the system. So that's the beauty of the third step. And I'm going to hand it back to Athena.
All right, wonderful. So I just have a couple more things that I wanted to mention, and that is that we will be including a mock exam in this course. You'll be taking it at the beginning, and then you'll let the 3 months go by, and you can take it again at the end, and you'll actually be able to chart your progress, and you will see how much you have progressed. Virginia and I will be sharing with you a lot of our all of our test taking tips. Pretty much every week we meet and we are trying to figure out how can we give you all of the information that we have and condense it into this 3-month period. But we will definitely set you on the road to success when it comes to taking these exams. And I'll turn it back over to Virginia.
All righty. And then the last thing that I want to tell you guys about is the importance of working hard. So your dreams don't work unless you do. Now, I was watching this documentary about Michael Jordan, and I'm always blown away by this idea that is so popular nowadays that you're either a born winner or a born loser. And I really don't think that's how it works. I think that it's important, the most important aspect is how hard you work. And I was so surprised when I learned that Michael Jordan wasn't the fastest kid. He wasn't the strongest kid. He wasn't the tallest one in his neighborhood. He wasn't even the best basketball player, but he was the one who was willing to work the hardest. And somehow we think that if we analyzed Michael Jordan's muscle tissue at 5 years old, we would find that it was superior to everybody else's. And that's just not the case. He was just willing to work harder. And that's what we're going to help you to do. Our state court oral exam masterclass is going to boost your skills in the consecutive mode, in sight translation, and in the simultaneous mode. We're going to maximize your bilingual court vocabulary, but most importantly, we're going to provide you a body, mind, and spirit approach. We're going to give you the support that you need, the guidance, the structure for you to push yourself and achieve amazing goals. And there is an application process. We want to make sure, first of all, that we get a really strong group, that your skills are up to par. But most importantly, we want to make sure that you're willing to do what Michael Jordan did. We want to make sure that you're willing to put in the time and the effort, which are your most precious resources. We want to make sure that everyone who become a part of this course is someone who's willing to put their best foot forward. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Brad, who's going to tell us a little bit about the tuition.
Thank you, Virginia and Athena, for an awesome presentation. Now, with no further ado, I'm going to talk about the registration. We've decided to have an early bird special this time around for $12.95 on or before March 1st. And following March 1st, the regular fee will be $14.95. And we will have a payment plan available too. That'll be 4 payments of $3.95. And that will be a deadline for those installment payments of March 12th. So we'd like to accommodate everyone. We really feel strongly about this program. We feel we can help you. Give us a call, chat with us, email us. We're here to work with you. And in addition, after the training, the live training is over with Virginia and Athena, you'll have 1 year access to the court interpreting labs that Athena and Virginia showed you earlier. So you'll have a lot of time to work with the material, go over it and master it. So you're prepared for your test when that time comes.
And now we're going to go ahead and open up to questions. Go ahead and use the chat. We'd love to answer any question that you may have.
And I did see, Virginia, in the chat, there was a question from Santino about scoring units. He had asked, just to confirm, do the scoring units of the labs cover slang and all the possible scoring units that appear on the oral exam? Slang will be covered. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Virginia?
Yes, we're definitely going to be covering slang and profanity, which is part of the test. But I would say that most importantly, we're going to give you a strong base of skills. You never know what's going to come up in this exam. So as Brad shared in the chat, the most important thing is for you to have strong skills, for you to be able to have the best consecutive note-taking skills, to go really fast in simultaneous, to improvise if you don't know a term, to make sense and make coherent interpretations in the sight translation mode. And that's going to allow you to make up for anything that might come up that you don't know.
Wonderful. And I'm seeing there's questions about contact information and signing up. Brad, can you put the application link in the chat? Would that be possible?
Yeah, I'm posting it right now. This is going to provide more information about the program and an opportunity to apply. And again, there's you can email us or call us if you have any questions. I'm going to post that on the chat right now.
And Julie answered,
yeah.
Julianne answered the question about when the class begins. We're going to be beginning on April the 12th and going on to July the 1st. And then you're going to have access to the material. And if you want to continue with your pod, we've actually structured 15 weeks for you, but we're going to be guiding you through 12 weeks.
There was a direct question. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
There was a direct question to my chat box about looking for prep materials in French so that you can pass the court exam. We are hoping to offer even more resources to people who interpret other languages other than Spanish, and we will definitely keep you posted about that. For the time being, if you interpret French or any other language, actually, especially if you interpret French, get in touch with me directly because I have my French court certification and I can steer you toward other resources that would be possible. But I don't think that it would be appropriate to take our course since it's geared with the bilingual materials that are Spanish-English.
I also see a question regarding if you can have longer access to the material, and Brad has answered that. We can extend your material for $99 so you can have further access to it after that. So basically what we're talking about here is we want to give you the right material, we want to give you the right environment, we want to give you the support that you need so you can work your butt off, because the truth is we can't perform miracles without your willingness to work hard. So we're going to create the right environment and give you the right tools so you can really rise to the occasion and give it your best. And we also have a question regarding study groups. Go ahead, Athena.
I was probably going to say the same thing that Virginia was going to say. So the question is, how do you decide on study groups? Seems some of us have a variety of experience and even some are already conditional or qualified. It would be ideal to group similarly experienced folks in the same pod. I think, Virginia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we have the same thought process. And the idea is that we'll be sending out a survey to the people who are accepted into our program, and we'll be asking you questions to gauge your skill level, and also to know your time zone, as well as your native language. And we're going to design the pods based on that information.
Yeah, so we're going to take into account some practical issues like where do you live, what's your availability, and also some academic issues like what level are you at, have you passed this test already, you know, what is your experience. I'm going to try to match you up with the right group so you can have, you know, the appropriate challenges.
Absolutely.
And, Virginia, we'll be sending a recording and an email out tomorrow. Virginia and Athena.
Yes, we're going to be sending you a link with the video of this course. And we are here to answer any questions that you have. And most importantly, the three of us are really passionate about helping you achieve your goals. That's what this is about. If you have a dream, you have to fight hard for it. And we just want to facilitate that process and make it so you can accomplish your goals.
I see a question from Santino. He did the same program as I did at Rutgers. That's awesome. I did a major in Spanish with a focus in translation and interpreting. So the question is, it's similar to the question from Antonio, which was about skill level. I would say, Santino, that there would be no concern when it comes to that. Ultimately, okay, so I've studied for medical interpretation, for legal interpretation in both French and in Spanish, as well as federal interpretation and my master's course. And yes, it got progressively harder over the years, and I incorporated new ideas and I learned new techniques, but the basis of what we're teaching you is the same. It's about doing an exercise, evaluating your particular weaknesses and strengths, and then tailoring your studies to make sure that you improve your particular weaknesses. So we will be grouping you in appropriate pods where you have a challenge, but whether you're starting out or you're already on your way in this journey, there will be challenges for everybody there. Let's see, was the link posted in the chat? Okay, Brad just posted it again. And then there was a question that I got directly. You said accepted into your program. Is there a requirement process? Yes, there is a screening process because we do want to know that you have the motivation and the minimum skill level that is needed to be able to be successful in the class and to be able to offer help to your classmates.
And I think that's just about it. If you guys have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help, and we wish you great success in your quest to become the best interpreter you can be.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for spending your Thursday evening with us. We truly appreciate it.
We truly do. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.